here's what I would like to say to you, Rabbi, since you're quoting scripture, okay? The one that's relevant to me is, woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness. And if you'd like to dive into a little more scripture, I think what's relevant is Revelation 3:9. Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. And I'm speaking directly to you, Rabbi Shmuley.
I watched the entire interview between Candace, Owens and Rabbi Shmuley, which has gone viral, by the way, on YouTube. And this was on matters Israel and Palestine, and also talking about the forces behind drumming a cancellation, to the extent that now they want to prevent her from traveling to Australia. In the interview, she not only annihilated and destroyed Rabbi Shmuley, but she sent him to oblivion with the facts which Rabbi himself couldn't refute. And these are some of the highlights from the interview.
Actually, one of the things that plausibly unites people across all religions, Muslims, Jews, Christians, is that we all recognize that Rabbi Shmuley is unhinged. He's just mentally, in my view, unwell. And I don't say that as an attack. I say that as just a reality, because I've never seen someone just make things up out of thin air that were never said, and trying to screen that as a defense of Black people. The Black people will never accept Rabbi Shmuley after Michael Jackson put him on a list of people who he felt were ruining his life. So you can stop your pleas with Black America, they won't work. Now, going back to the context of what you've asked us to speak about today, I think one of the things that the world is recognizing, and what we've always recognized, is that there are radical fringe sects that break out within every single religion, amongst every race. There's white supremacy, there's Black supremacy, there's radical Islam, there are all of these Christ cults around the world. And I think right now it's important for people to understand that radical Judaism is also a thing, and you're watching an example of it right now on your screen. The person sitting across from me, or sitting next to me, I guess, posted on his Facebook page in 2016 a tribute to someone who he said was his mentor. That was Rabbi Menachem Schneerson. He said he was his mentor and his friend. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with Rabbi Schneerson, there were some Jews who believed that he was and is the Messiah. So rejecting Christ, but believing that that rabbi was his Messiah. Now, you may remember in the news recently, there was this radicalized faction of the Lubavitch Orthodox community in Brooklyn that were digging tunnels in Brooklyn and hurling benches at police officers. Well, and by the way, this is per the Times of Israel, that faction of individuals are followers of Rabbi Schneerson. So again, you have Rabbi Shmuley who believes that that's his mentor. They believed that he was the Messiah. What is it? It becomes important to understand, what did Rabbi Schneerson preach? Well, he preached Jewish supremacism, the hatred of all non-Jews. And you don't have to take my word for it, because if I said it, they would say that's anti-Semitism. You should instead take the word of the two Jewish professors who translated his work. Those authors' names were Israel Shahak and Norton Mezvinsky, and their book was entitled Jewish Fundamentalism in Israel. From that book, we learned that Shmuley.
In this case, Rabbi doesn't believe that there are some factions within Israel who are against the kind of atrocities being committed by the Israeli people against the Palestinian. But he only believes that whatever that is being done against the Palestinian, it is a way of Israel trying to defend themselves.
Lee's mentor, Schneerson, describes the difference between a Jew and a non-Jew. And he says, quote, "Thus we do not have a case of profound change in which a person is merely on a superior level. The body of a Jewish person is of totally different quality from the body of all nations of the world." And he talks about the substance of the Jewish body versus the substance of non-Jews, saying that the inner quality, quote, is so different and so great that the body should be considered completely different species.
If you say that certain people coming from a specific part of the world, that they are bodies of different species from the rest of the world, don't you think that is being mentally ill in a way? And that's exactly what Candace is trying to describe on who Rabbi is.
So that is a belief, and you can go through his speeches and you will see that he continually talks about how non-Jews should be treated, and that, again, we are a different species. This is what Rabbi Shmuley believes in. We have to come to terms with the fact that there are Jewish radicals, and it's incumbent upon the Jewish community to call them out. I'm glad that you brought up my rhetoric about Black Lives Matter, the organization, which was basically allowing Black criminals to take to the street to burn down, to loot, and to riot in the name of racism, because it shows that I I'm on equal footing here, that across the board, I do not support supremacism, whether it's coming from my community or whether or not it is coming from yours. And I think the entire world is now paying attention and wondering what is going on in Israel? What is this government? Is this a radical fringe government? And many people are concluding that the answer to that question is yes.
And the most interesting part in this conversation was Candace quoted a verse, and Rabbi could not believe and actually was not expecting this part, especially coming from Candace Owens. And this is what Candace had to say.
Prior to October 7th, I don't think many people were engaged with what is happening in Israel. You know, we kind of all said the same thing. Israel is our friend and ally. I count myself among those people. Post October 7th, the world, and especially I would say Zionists in media, were demanding that we all pay attention. And when we began to pay attention, we didn't like what we saw. You cannot tell me to ever feel comfortable with 18,000 children being ruthlessly murdered. You can't get me to feel comfortable as a Christian with the amount of more explosives dropped, tons of explosives dropped on Gaza than were dropped in Hiroshima. This doesn't make sense to me. Gaza is 30 miles long, 7 miles wide. It's incredibly dense population. And this is, by the way, according to Haaretz, that 40,000 Palestinians have been murdered. I believe they're getting those numbers from the Gaza Health Ministry. And here's what I would like to say to you, Rabbi, since you're quoting scripture, okay? The one that's relevant to me is woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness. And if you'd like to dive into a little more scripture, I think what's relevant is Revelation 3:9. Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. And I'm speaking directly to you, Rabbi Shmuley. The fact that you would try to say, I am Jewish, and this is what I believe, and do and say the things that you are doing. People can see and hear evil, and what you are doing right now is an act of evil. The lies that you are telling, not just on me, but also on my family members, are a good example for the world to see what we are referring to when we call something radical Zionism.
Without feelings and emotions, what do you think about the debate? Give your thoughts on the commenting section, and if you like the video, give the thumbs up and do not forget to subscribe